Greetings, YouTube. Today I'm going to review a role-playing game, Deathstalkers, the fantasy horror role-playing game. Now, it's rare that I encounter a role-playing game that I've never heard of. But this past Yule, I got a gift certificate for Barnes & Noble. I don't often buy from Barnes & Noble. I don't like their selection as much as Amazon. I tend to use the cards in person as opposed to online, but I thought I'd check their online selection for role-playing games, and that's when I encountered this, and I had never heard of Deathstalkers. Now, it's a rare occurrence, but I have never heard of a role-playing game. So I thought, what the heck, I'll buy a used copy and get it for free. Well, I spent too much, because this is not a good role-playing game. First, there's the fact that when I bought the book, I found this on the inside. Damaged copy, not for resale. And the cover was separated and coming away from the spine of the book. I was able to fix that with some glue. But the seller didn't tell me. So that really didn't set the tone well for me when I started looking at this book. And so I began to flip through the book. And I try to be generous. I really try to be generous with the book. I understand that not everyone is a skilled writer, but this is the second edition of this book. This book has been out for a decade, all right? And even in 1999, when the original document was produced, we had things like grammar software and spell checkers, all right? Now, I don't know about you, but I know the difference between the word D-O, do, and the word D-U-E, do. The author of this book does not know the difference between those two words. And that's like a 6th grade grammar mistake. And when I hit the second time this author did that within the first 40 pages, I stopped reading word for word. At that point, I just began to skim the mechanics in the game and highlight things that looked like they might be interesting. Because that's a major fault. That's the kind of thing someone who has English as a second language might pull off. But you don't publish a book unless you have somebody edit it. And I imagine that this book was never edited. I did like the first mechanic I encountered. The first mechanic I encountered was a stat check ability. And your stats are checked on a die 20. And so your stat range is, fairly standard, D&D kind of stat range. So if you have a 15 in a stat and you roll a die 20, if you get a 15 or lower, you succeed. Simple and elegant. The problem is it doesn't appeal to me. I've been rolling die 20s for 31 years. And for those 31 years, 20 is the number you want. 1 is the number you want to avoid. So for me, it isn't as satisfying to roll a 1 and be, woohoo, I rolled a 1. It just doesn't do it for me. I like the idea of rolling that high number. It's just who I am. So I wasn't thrilled about that. Then I encountered the races themselves. Now, the races in the game, there are a very fair number of them. For some reason, the author of this book decided that each race needed a stat category called cannibalism. Yeah, every race has a listing of what percentage chance they have of being cannibalistic. Now, I realize that some cultures and societies have ritual cannibalism. I don't judge them. It's not my job to do that. It's very common, however, in human history, and we have found lots of evidence that cannibalism is a lot more common than most people think it was. But it's a situational thing. Even in today's world, people find themselves in situations, there are no other food sources, they turn to that rather than die. Now, there are people who won't do that. And again, I'm not making a moral judgment. If you're not killing someone for food, what you do with the corpse is none of my business. Okay? But you put down in a race stat what percentage chance they have of eating members of their own species? And how wide of the definition is he using as cannibalism? Is it all sentient creatures, or is it just of your own species? It's a very strange mechanic. It's even stranger that the race of the half-undead have a 20% chance of being cannibals, while the half-cats, an incredibly dull name for a race, have a 36% chance of cannibalism. And there are 3 listed races of humans, essentially Caucasians, Asians, and black people. Guess which one has a chance of cannibalism? Come on, folks, guess. Yeah, the black ones have a 40% chance of cannibalism. The other 2 races don't. I don't grasp that either. So I started getting into the book, I started looking at things, and what struck me, and you can ask my wife, because she was there when I'm reading this, and was just flabbergasted by a lot of the information I was encountering. This book sounds to me like it was written by a 12-year-old. Now, they have a god listed here. Here we go, where are we? Darwin, god of knowledge and wisdom. Wisdom spelled with a Z. Father Time is one of the gods. They have a listing for a dead god. Now, I can understand that. Some gods follow a fashion. It happens in the real world. And they have the god Loki, L-O-K-I. Okay, might be a good backstory about why Loki is now a dead god. Loki is listed as the god of jungles. Is the author aware that there is actually an historical god named Loki from the Norse pantheon? I mean, and then we get down to the geographical layout of the world. And we have a place called the Great Frozen Forest. That's what you call someplace you've never been. The Good Lands. The Lands of 1,000 Curses. The Great River Islands. You know, that's not what you name a place for the people who live there. That's what you name a place when you've never been there and it's just this mysterious place in the distance. The Broken Lands. The Sea of Shadows. The Empire of Dundee. I'm sorry. This book was written by a 12-year-old. And it wasn't well written. Now, physically, there is a background print on the pages, which means the text is almost the same, and the text is almost the same color, which means there are sections that are very hard to read. And then there's a varying font size throughout the book. Some of the font, the largest of the font, is at a readable scale. But there are some fonts in this book that are so small that even with bifocals, I could not read it. I would need to get a magnifying glass to read this text. It's just bad layout. Poorly executed layout. The writing is atrocious. The game is juvenile at best. I'm sorry. This is going to now go into my collection of bad role-playing games. And I have quite a few of them. This is now one of them. So if you're looking for a good game, and I know there are people out there that seem to like this game, I'm sorry, I don't see it. If you can explain it to me, I'd appreciate it. But this game is just not good.